Hello everyone, this is Tony Richards. Welcome to another edition of Clear Vision TV. And on this episode of Clear Vision TV, I'm continuing my series of life lessons that I've learned. Over a career that spanned more than 30 years, believe it or not, I've accumulated several things that I think if I pass them along to you, they might be helpful to you and they might add value to you. Today, I want to talk to you about taking as many notes as you can. Taking as many notes as you can. Why is that important? Well, for one thing, the brain is a marvelous thing. It's incredibly self-sufficient. It has its own maintenance system. It has its own thinking apparatus, and it's a wonderful thing. And one of the most profound things that I ever learned about the brain is the short-term memory versus the long-term memory. And things get in the long-term chemical memory of the brain by two ways. One way is through repetition, doing it over and over and over and over. That's how you learned your multiplication tables, remember? You wrote them on the board, you recited them over and over and over. The other way that things get in the long-term memory of the brain is through strong emotions. For instance, if I ask you what you were doing on 9/10/2001, you'd probably not be able to remember at all. But if I ask you where you were on 9/11/2001, you'd know exactly what you were doing when the Twin Towers were attacked, right? Because it was a strong emotional thing that happened that would forever be etched in your memory. So what we're really battling here is short-term memory, the things that you really need to remember that may not be significant enough emotionally in the moment, but later on in life, you'll wish you could go back and get them. Do you remember that? Have you ever had a moment where you're like, boy, I wish I would have had a picture of that or a photograph of that back then, when at the time it didn't really seem all that significant, but you wanted a record of it in the future. Well, that's what taking good notes will do for you, because you're encountering people who are genius level people all the time. If you just take a moment to recognize and respect people's genius, people are saying amazing things and you're having amazing thoughts. So one of the things I always recommend to leaders that I work with is to get a journal to keep notes in. And so I've had shoulder surgery back in June, and so I've been recovering the last several weeks. And so it was on my left shoulder, so I'm right-handed, which is a little bit of an advantage because I write with my right hand. So I've had plenty of time to work in my journal. This is one of my journals. I've got a whole library of these things on the shelf, and there are some very valuable things to me, maybe not to anyone else, but to me in these journals that I would like to go back. And every now and then I'll just go pull a random journal off the shelf and just open it up to a random page and read what's on there. And immediately when I do that in my mind, I'm transported back to that moment that is randomly stored in my brain that wouldn't normally get called up because it's not necessarily in my long-term memory without some prompting, if that makes any sense to you. But I know a lot of people keep their journal right by their bed. So if they wake up in the middle of the night with a thought or something, they can quickly record it. The Chinese used to say that the faintest ink is better than the strongest memory. So it's important to write down your life. Your life's important. It's worth recording, because someday you may want to go back and look at all the things that you thought in the moment were important, but you couldn't go back and access them. But with journals, you can. So let me give you a couple of reasons why journaling is really, really important for taking notes and recording things. Number one, keeping a journal requires us to write down our goals. So there's a man in South Korea who's one of the most wealthy men in the whole world, wealthy businessman, and he's got a ritual in his morning routine where he gets up every morning and rewrites his goals. He just writes them over and over and over and over and over. And I don't know what it is. I don't know the scientific explanation for it, but there's something happens, the synchronization of sorts happens between your mind, your soul, your body when you write. Think about signing a check, right? If you sign a check, accountability immediately comes. That you're accountable for what that check represents, that the person you're giving that check to can cash it, right? And so accountability to your goals gets stronger the more you write them down. I can't explain why, I just know it's true. Number 2, a journal serves as a permanent record of your progress. Remember I said I like to go back and get some of my old journals out and look at them? Well, it's great to look back and see what my goals were 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And sometimes I think, man, I was thinking small back then, right? Because I've moved on beyond where my thinking was at that time. The 2015 goals are so much more advanced than the 2009 goals, right? Remember what was going on in 2009, how your circumstances surround you, because we had a recession that hit, a financial crisis that hit. So my goals weren't very big. Mainly they were just to kind of get by and survive and stay in the game. But in 2015, my goals are completely the opposite. They are to grow and to expand and to get better. So going back in time, looking at your progress is a very strong advantage in having a journal. Number 3, writing requires us to think through the whys and the hows. So if you take some time to refine your thinking, as you're writing, you want to make sure the why is there, because that indicates your intention, how strongly you feel that you're going to do this and accomplish this, and the how is the tactical way that you're going to go about accomplishing the goal. And number 4, a journal proves that we have solved problems in the past. You know, it just builds my confidence to go back and look in my old journals and see some of the problems that I was facing in the past and how I solved them, how I got past it, how we moved on. All things are temporary. The bad times are not going to last, and the good times are not going to last. Everything is just temporary. Everything goes in cycles. There's ups, there's downs, there's, you know, the awesome amount of preparation that you put into yourself is what gets you through the ups and the downs. And going back in your journal and seeing how you made it through some times in the past reminds you how, if you're going through a tough time now, it's just temporary. All things must pass, and a journal helps build your confidence in that area. So get a journal. You need to take notes. Taking notes is a great life lesson because it records your life, and your life is worth recording. This is Tony Richards. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time on Clear Vision TV.